Good morning, everyone. This is Bill Samuel in Mountain Brook, Alabama. And we're coming outside to sit in the sunshine of a brand new spring. Spring is sprung here in Alabama. I made a tape for you yesterday and promptly messed it up last night. But it was raining yesterday, and I observed as to how all of the rain, every drop, would be certain to turn into blossoms for spring. Well, this morning it's happened. This morning it's happened. The dogwood opened last night, and while they're not white yet or pink, there are beautiful green blossoms all over the dogwood, and it'll only be another week until this will be a fairyland. And last night the azaleas opened up into full bloom. Of course, the yellow bells and the forsythia have already bloomed, and the jonquils are at their height right now. The daffodils and the peach and the wild cherry and the red bud. This is perhaps the only time of the whole year that Alabama looks for a couple of weeks the way parts of California along the coast look all the time with all of its beautiful flowers. And you're with me outside now going for a walk, and two wild ducks have taken up residence with us. It's an interesting thing because Rachel, we're not going to have a garden this year because we're getting ready to make a trip to the West Coast to vacation a little bit out there in California and visit with some of you folks and meet old friends and perhaps make new. So because we're not having a garden, Rachel, and it's a mulch garden that Rachel has, she's covered it with plastic wrap, a heavy plastic wrap that shines and glistens in the sunshine and collects water when it rains. And two wild ducks have taken up here just as though it were a pond or a lake, and they're here visiting right now. The thing that's so remarkable about these ducks, this is about the 5th year I think we've had them, and it must be the same group because these ducks are just absolutely tame. And I can come right over here and walk up to them and say hello. Hello, fellas. How you doing? How you doing? I'm not going to bother you. What an honor. What an honor to have you fellas come here every year. A beautiful mallard with all that color. We call him Demosthenes. And he used to come with 2 hens. Now he only has 1, and this one is Doolittle. The other one was Do-Lot. They would get on the front porch, and one of them would do little and the other one would do lot. Well, I waited for the airplane to pass. I had a flood of mail as a consequence of the last tape in which I mentioned keeping a journal. That flood of mail was 4 letters asking about the journal and requesting that I say a little bit more about it. So I think I shall. Years ago, I referred to it as meditative writing. And I dared go out and lecture about it on one trip, only to find out that I had made quite a mistake. Because it's such a powerful thing to do, such a powerful exercise, and I apparently was misunderstood. I didn't say it as well as it could be said, and so it was misapplied. And a book or two got into print about the matter, and sermons were preached here and there about the matter, and they were all wet. It wasn't at all what was intended. And so I resolved at that time to keep that instruction for those with whom I could visit face to face. But now there are parts about journal keeping that I can talk about here on this tape. In fact, most of it can be done right here. And I'll just disclose most of it right here, right now. I see no reason why not, because the idea of journal keeping is very, very old. As a matter of fact, our early literature in this country came from the journals of the patriots of America. Most of our beautiful literature came from the early journals. And of course you are familiar with the journals of the English writers. And so journal keeping isn't anything that's new at all. And right here at the very beginning, if we're going to talk about this, let's understand that keeping a journal is not keeping a diary. We're not talking about keeping a diary at all. We are talking about exploring one's own ideas, exploring one's own modes of thinking, one's mode of thought. We're talking about defining terms and seeing what we really mean when we use certain words, and making certain that we really mean something when we use certain words, and that we're not just mouthing a word that has no genuine meaning to us. I, via the vicissitudes of life, began a journal when I was still in military school as a young man. My very first entries in the journal were definitions that I could make for myself. I would define terms to see what I really meant. I'd take the Bible, and I saw the word soul once, and I said, what does soul mean? And I began to write what I thought it meant to me. And the term truth and love and Christ and wisdom, all of those terms were defined very carefully in my journal, not once but many times. And yesterday, as I was preparing to make a tape, I went back through some of the old journals, and I couldn't help but notice that a definition that I would give something in 1940 was not the definition I would give something in 1950 or in 1960. As a matter of fact, Bill on Tuesday isn't Bill on Monday, and I think today is Thursday, and Bill Thursday certainly isn't Bill Wednesday, and what will be on this tape, hopefully, will be a better statement, a more complete statement, and a happier statement about journal keeping. In any event, it is true that those who come here have all been admonished to begin a journal and to keep it. I've found that the mood of the day can be established. If one awakens in the morning, and before he sets out for his daily chores, he sits down and writes a couple of lines in his journal. That's all. Just 2 lines. 2 lines. 2 beautiful lines. Worthy of God. Worthy of truth. Worthy of beauty. Worthy of all that God is. Just 2 lines. Oh, I can remember that when I first started this, and for many, many years, my journal entries each day would be on a fresh sheet of white paper, and I would look at that white paper and I would say, pure as the driven snow, unblemished and spotless as the guiltless lamb. Now, let me put on that paper something that is worthy of God, of deity, of divinity, worthy of life.
My goodness. If all of the writers in the world did that when they sat down to write, what a wonderful bunch of books we'd have to read. And how beautiful the newspapers would be. And there would be no filth and no corruption written at all, because it's not worthy of the truth. And then I learned years ago that if I made an entry in my journal just before I went to bed, it helped influence the night's sleep. I slept better. And very often I was instructed in my sleep, especially if in my journal I requested instruction. I asked about wisdom and asked to be told of the beauty and the truth that life is, as opposed to the anguish and unhappiness that life is not and could never be. So, 2 lines in the morning in a journal, 2 lines in the afternoon in your journal before you retire. And then, of course, whenever a problem presents itself, whenever something anguishing occurs, whenever it's one of those now see here, what's going on anyway situations arise, you can open up the journal, and underneath the morning's entry, you can begin to answer, now see here, what is this anyway? What's really happening? What's really going on? What is the truth of this situation? Well, friends, I must say this, too, that it wasn't long with my keeping a journal that I found that on occasion a mysterious thing happened. I think all writers know about it. Really, everyone knows about it. The days when the muse comes along to whisper in our ear, that sweet lady who brings words with her that allows many of the inside thoughts to be articulated. And on those days, instead of 2 lines, it might be 200 lines. In fact, the days when the muse arrives, it is almost better that one continue to write, even if he's late for work, even if the dishes don't get done. And those pages that come through with an especial grace like that, it's well to mark those pages with a little, I put a little star in the upper left-hand corner. Or sometimes it's just a paragraph. I'll mark that paragraph with a little star. And the reason for that is, now listen gently. On those occasions when we awaken and all seems gloomy and dreary and dark, and it takes forever to write 2 lines, and there may be only 1 word on each line, I found that I can go back to one of those pages that came through with grace, and I can read what is written there. And almost immediately, I'm carried to that point of feeling that was being evinced and evidenced when that particular page was written. So the journal serves as a grand leveler. It lifts us up from the doom and gloom of human conditions. And by the same token, when there is the unnatural exhilaration, the hyper exhilaration of excitement, it can bring us down to where the truth is, to the quietness and the stillness within. All right, am I giving you some idea about the value of keeping a journal? Well, now let me give you one of the grandest reasons of all for your journal keeping. Words are things. Words are tangible, finite things because they're man-made, and yet words are born within us. And they come from the inside out. We have a thought within, and it is made tangible if we pick up a pencil and we write that thought on a piece of paper. If we merely have the thought and then go on to another thought and another, soon the first thought is forgotten and lost in the jumble of many, many thoughts and many words. But if a thought comes forth from within, let's say, it is a new spring this morning here in Alabama, and I see a butterfly already flying in the treetops. There he is. Well, should I have written that? All of those thoughts came forth from within, and that thought was made tangible when I wrote it on a piece of paper. And where just a few moments ago that tangible thought didn't exist, suddenly here it is on a piece of paper. It's been written down. And I have begun to do what I was admonished to do from the very beginning, to make the outside as the inside. To make the outside as the inside. And when you make these two into a single one, said Jesus, then will the secrets of heaven be revealed unto thee. Well, years ago, I began to marvel at the relationship between words, excuse me, between words, excuse me again, between words and our tangible scene all around us. Is there a relationship between the words that come out of our mouth and the sights we see right here, right now? Right now, as you watch maybe the little wheels going around in your tape recorder, or as you look at the room about you, or as you see your feet on the floor or the chair you're sitting in, or as you feel those things, is there some relationship between the words that have come out of your mouth and that event that is transpiring, this event that is happening this moment? I assure you that there is the closest relationship. The closest relationship. Let me make just a little aside. I've never been known to come outdoors to make a tape without somebody's tractor starting up somewhere or someone's lawnmower. I hear a tractor in the distance and I hope you're not bothered by it. Someone probably cutting his new spring weeds. Or maybe plowing for a new garden. But there, maybe for a moment now. Where was I? I was saying that words directly influence the now moment. And I was going to say that of all of the words in the world that are most important to us, which words do you suppose they are? I know I had a minister here one time tell me, oh, the words of the Bible are the most important words to me. And he assured me for the longest time that the words of the Bible were the most important words in the world, and Someone told me once that his Upanishad contained the most wonderful words of all, and the Gita contained the grand words of all. Someone else told me that the Tao Te Ching contained the words he lived by. And just recently a lady told me that yes, she lived by the words of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu's beautiful little book. Well, I'm sure we're all well-intentioned when we make such statements, but the words we live by in this tangible arena of people, places, and things, the words closest to us and most meaningful to us are those words that come out of our own mouth. If one doesn't like the color and the condition of his daily experience, let that one become concerned about the words that come from his mouth, the words that most affect the tangible scene of daily affairs for each of us are our own words, not the words of this holy book or that one, that teacher or leader or philosopher or this one. The words that pass our own lips have a potent effect on the scene around us this very moment. I would ask you to consider and see if this isn't so. I look at the shoes and the trousers and the shirt and the clothing of this body. They are part of the present scene because somewhere along the line I said I wanted them. Words were spoken to a salesperson, I suppose. Isn't the scene for all of us, to some extent, a scene into which, as which, our own words have placed us? Aren't the home, the apartment, the automobile, the marriage, our friends and activities all closely related to the words that have, our own words, that have come from our lips? Isn't that so? Quite a number of years ago, I was stationed at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where the Command and General Staff College is, and I was an instructor there. Also at Fort Leavenworth is a prison where officers that have in one way or another violated the law have been imprisoned. One day I was talking to one of those officers, an ex-general who had done something wrong somewhere along the line and was in prison for it. And we were talking about the power of words, and especially our own words. And when I observed that our own words most certainly influence our tangible experience in the present moment, he told me, that's not so. He said, a judge's words put me here, not mine. But later, after he had had a chance to talk about it, and long after I had left Fort Leavenworth and was back here in Alabama, he wrote me and said, I've been thinking about what you said, and I must admit that it was my own big mouth that resulted in my imprisonment here. A moment's reflection allows one to see that even such direful events as that, the most awful scenes that are apparently imposed, sometimes we think by others, are still closely related to and colored by words that have come forth from within us and been made into tangible speech. Listen again. Words are prime movers in one's tangible experience. To put it this way, the mouth is that place and space where the intangible becomes tangible, where the intangible belief within becomes a tangible sound without. No wonder Peter of the Bible quoted the prophets and wrote, Whoever loves life and would see good days must restrain his tongue from evil. Whoever loves life and would see good days must restrain his tongue. The first requisite, the very first one, if one would see good days, is to restrain his tongue and his lips, said Peter. Inasmuch as it is evident that one's most personal outside, that is our outside, it's really not outside, it's within awareness, isn't it? But we call it outside, removed from the body. That is the scene closest to us, all around us, the most immediate scene at hand. That which the eyes see and the ears hear, meaning the physical eyes and the physical ears. Well, that outside is decorated from his inner knowledge of beauty. And we can see that we, in a sense, call forth the rugs and the paintings and the furniture and the color schemes and the harmony which exist within the mind's eye. And inasmuch as our calling forth is primarily done with words, then perhaps the inharmony that one finds flooding his daily scene and his world is the consequence of an inharmonious flood of words. Oh boy. Yes, yes. One may pound the piano keys with his fist, and by so doing you would overpaint the scene with a terrible vibration of cacophony, wouldn't you? Or one may do something else. He may, with an inner knowledge of harmony, an inner knowledge of music, he can strike single notes or chords on the piano that fill the room with sunshine. Words are tangible notes, but words produce an overspreading considerably more lasting, longer lasting, than the sounds that fade from the piano. The court summons, or the lawsuit, or the cancer seem more lasting than sounds fading from the piano. Angry words don't fade so quickly. So, if one would have his scene of daily affairs appear in brighter depict, healthier, wealthier, happier depict, let one stop concerning himself so mightily about the words of others, about the words in the Bible or this holy book or that one or this textbook or that one, and begin to take note of the message coming forth from within himself. Paul told the Romans, he said, the word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart. The word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart. Well, listener, listen to this and see if there is any truth in this statement. The value in any message of truth is in direct proportion to that message's insistence that we turn within and discover for oneself the message, the divine identity that has ever been all one is. The honesty of any truth message, be it Eddie's or Goldsmith's or Jesus or Sambo's or the board of directors or the popes or the presidents, lies in the statement that the truth is within oneself and is oneself. It's time to turn the tape over. Well, we have moved inside, and I hope it'll be a bit quieter here than outside. I suffered through 2 tractors. The second tractor started up there, and then finally when a power saw came on, somebody trimming off all of the damage from the winter ice storms, I decided that we would best move indoors. So you're with me in the study now.
midst a most amazing mess, as Rachel and I get ready to make our trip to California. And by the way, we have no talks scheduled for California, but if they occur, they'll just happen. If anyone wants to talk, and because the little small talks, private, quiet talks, underneath the trees or in the little living room or on the front porch, those are the talks that are easiest for me, and in which most seems communicated. Because except for the few times I've gone out and given seminars, my work is beautifully spontaneous. It just happens as people come by. And so it shall be. Any mail that is sent here to this Alabama address will still reach Rachel and me in California. And those who request to know of our whereabouts out there, just let us know, and we'll tell you. We think we'll be there for all the months of April, May, and perhaps even part of June. Now, back to what's much more important. We were talking about the honest message, the honest truth message. The honest truth message, as we said, lies in one that turns one to discover himself within, that turns one within where the real discoveries are made, to turn within to the secret place, to the Holy of Holies, to the Shekinah, and there find the true message. The beauty of such a message, it seems to me, lies in its fulfilling the function of way showing, but doing it void of theory, void of speculation or commentary. And it's a message that doesn't bind the seeker. It doesn't induce guilt nor encourage the veneration of the messenger or the messenger's words. The childlikeness of such a message encourages one to find the beauty and the power and the wonder of his own words, and to express the discovered life within. Such is the work the journal does. The place is within. The place is within consciousness. The place is within this very awareness that listens to these words. It is not in any scientific metaphysical system. And it isn't in the semantic games we play with the words of others. If, as is the case with nearly all organized theology, the message speaks primarily of healings and demonstrations and of altered states of consciousness and all of those peripheral events, such a message can be as stultifying and misleading as it is helpful. Therefore, it isn't worthy of identity. Ultimately, we have done with following the messages of others to become the finder of our own messiahship. We find our own message. Salvation lies in this action and in no other. The first freedom and the last freedom lie in self-discovery. That discovery is immaculate, untouched by anyone else. It is a virgin discovery and recognition of deity within and without. Any message that has one following a personal leader or a teacher for anything longer than is absolutely necessary to find the authority that one himself is a distorting, thwarting teaching. Now, I'm not saying that we don't follow the instructions of others, that we don't read or listen to others. That's what we're doing right now, for goodness sake. But the ones to listen to are the ones who tell us that the real messenger lies within, and we go there to find it.
those who speak of levels of awareness, of states and stages of consciousness, of spiritual hierarchies, as though they were outside one's very own awareness right here and now, are liars from the beginning. Their teachings confuse the world with false hope and rob the innocent with false pretense. We have done with that to find the word that is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart. In this regard, you may have heard me say this before somewhere, but Norman Cousins, with whom I corresponded, editor of the Saturday Review at one time, Norman Cousins quotes Albert Schweitzer. The famous Dr. Albert Schweitzer is telling him that inside each person is the real doctor. The greatest service any doctor can perform, Dr. Schweitzer is quoted as saying, is to stand aside and let the doctor within do the work of healing. Yes, yes, yes. Deity within is quite able to tend its own qualities and attributes appearing as tangibility. I've been told by those who first heard these words, oh, well, I can't believe there's very much wisdom in me. I can't believe that my message is the message. And yet everything that one does is predicated on his own words. The words that one believes most fervently are his own words. But since when does omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence need messengers with messages that point to themselves rather than God? And that's what we're turning to when we don't turn to the self within. Where is the leader who is needed to teach the sparrow out there the song imprinted in its heart? Why, those little birdlings are born and shortly they're singing. And where was the messenger needed to teach it? And where is the teacher who teaches the seed how to grow? Or the azalea here how to bloom? Where is the angelic leader and minister who exhorts the bud to open and give its fragrance to the earth? Who teaches the animals to prepare for a winter that they have no book knowledge of, no intellectual knowledge of, no... Well, why must man, of all creatures, why must man insist on ignorance until he has studied system after system after system after system? Finally, only to surrender from the anguish of all of it. And when he surrenders from the anguish of all of it, he is quick to awaken to the wisdom that is already himself. Oh boy, there are many messengers abroad in the land, but the one to heed is the one who says to look for one's own messenger within, and then this, that's all important, and then makes it plain on the tables precisely how this is done for oneself. And listen, those qualified to do this use their own words. They don't give you backing up references from 100 other sources to try to prove their words to you. They use their own words, and they tell their own story, which they have lived, and their own story is the proof of their words. Now see here, we are not messengers. I certainly don't claim to be a messenger. We are the message itself. Identity is, and we can all say, I am life itself. And that is what the honest message has been about from the first. We are life, not possessors of life. We are wisdom itself, not a personality who may become wise if He studies this and that and something else. Beyond the pale of humanhood and its many instructors lies a perfection already spread over the earth. Already the whole and healthy body of God, functioning perfectly in absolute harmony. I have found a measure of that joy, and I sing its song. Right now I'm singing its song. To whom? To the selfhood I am alone. And who listens? The selfhood I am alone. Where is another? I am heard, because the self hears itself, and there is no other. The meek of myself needs spiritual exercises maybe only for the shortest time. The journal is a spiritual exercise. Keeping the journal is a spiritual exercise. But it's needed only for the shortest time. The meek and the childlike of myself do not have to struggle to understand the intricacies and paradoxes of being. That battle has already been fought and won. As I sit down with a pencil and paper, I have good tidings to tell the children of myself. That a simple harmony and a happy perfection are here, now, living as this life we are, binding up the old think's broken-hearted followers, awakening enthusiasm within the husks, elevating thought from struggle and apprehension and morbidity and death into the conscious awareness of eternal life. The message that says, turn within. This message proclaims liberty to all mankind, and it delivers. It delivers. By George, it delivers. This message has one turn within and discover the Godhead, primal word from which identity and all tangibility flow. An old man by the name of Shur P. Han was a venerated Taoist sage with whom I happened to live in China for nearly 3 years. Oh, what a grand fortune that was. He told me once, the song one sings to himself is carried around the world. And when I asked him how, he told me, perhaps by the whispering trees and the nightingale. So if our words are carried around the world, hadn't we best begin to examine them and look at them? How better than keeping a journal of thoughts and ideas? Well, there you go. I've said it as best I could again. I might mention 2 or 3 little thoughts that come in passing. Just had a letter from a lady with whom I've studied much over the years. And she said, spiritual exercises never appealed to me. But now I see, now I'm forced to admit that my writing has been the open sesame, the avenue to self-discovery. Might add that that lady has published her 4th or 5th book now. And another gentleman I'm thinking of has published at least 2 books and has others soon to be published or awaiting publication. And he says that his most joyful time is the time he sits to be still and write in his journal. I know of another lovely lady who was told these things 15 years ago. And today she is editor of a publication of truth. And I know many others who are now published writers. All began with a journal of their own thoughts and their own ideas rather than with the words of others. So if fruitage is the proof, we've a whole tree full of delicious apples. Maybe I should say peaches instead of apples. And since that can be misconstrued too, how about oranges instead of peaches? Okie doke. One more thought that seems very important to me about your journal keeping. It isn't necessary to write religious things in it. It isn't necessary to fill it full of a lot of metaphysical stuff. We write what is worthy of God, which includes beauty and tenderness and joy. So we can write of the twinkle in someone's eye that we've seen, two elderly people holding hands in the park, and the joyful sight that is. Children tumbling in the park. Red buds blooming in the spring. Light shining through the wings of a butterfly. What could be more godly than that? What is more worthy of the ineffable Godhead than to speak of beauty and joy and tenderness and uprightness and love? So the journal becomes a joy when we don't have to put down the clinical, antiseptic terms of metaphysics. But not ignoring our metaphysics either. But writing what that science allows us to write. Well, almost 40 years of journal keeping has allowed me to learn lots of little secrets that I can tell you, but I save that for our face-to-face discussion. The tangible how-to-do-its are explained here on this tape, but there are many others that I will be happy to talk about when we meet face-to-face. Well, I see I have tape left, and for the remainder of the tape, just for gentle listening, allow me to take you back to the year 1967. And right here at this very place that was once called Juniper Hill and now is called Woodsong, for a tape that was made many years ago on equipment that was very poor, but at least you'll be able to hear the birds. And for those of you who know that there is a communication between the angels of the sky and us, we'll hear something beautiful. So it's simply entitled Bird Walk, and I'll put as much of it on as remains on the tape here. Well, good morning. How's everybody this morning? Welcome to Mountain Brook. It's kind of bright and early, isn't it? I hope you don't mind getting up this early. And I guess you can hear all my birds welcome you too.
particular place is called Panorama, and as you can see, the sun is rising. It rises in the east here in Alabama, just like it rises everywhere else. These birds you're listening to are mockingbirds and martins or swallows. And I think that's a rooster out here in the distance. We're coming down the hill. Oh, just listen, just listen. Anyone who could say that there isn't heaven right here, right where we are, just doesn't know what they're talking about, do they? We're walking down the hill of Panorama, going over on the west side. Oh, golly, what a beautiful morning. Pink clouds up above. Coming right now through Mom's orchard of assorted trees. I hear an owl, don't I? Guess those are doves. That sounds like a mockingbird. And these pines right here on the right. I think they're wondering what I'm doing out here so early. Well, I'm getting to sit down right here. All right. Now we're under the trees. With an awful lot of birds. I hope you're getting all those bird sounds. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, testing, testing. Yeah, I see the needles bouncing, so maybe you're getting the birds, but they don't bounce with the birds. So it might be that we're not getting them very well. In any event, I didn't bring any material this morning to talk about. We're just going to enjoy the morning. We're going to enjoy this morning a sense of listening as well as a sense of seeing. Yesterday we walked about and we looked intently. Now this morning we intend to look intently, but listen intently as well. Please notice the sun coming up over there. Isn't that beautiful? Now, people that sleep late miss the beauty of a sunrise like that. And they miss the early morning sounds. You see, there's a dimension of sound just as surely as there's a dimension of sight. Most of us spend all of our time concerned with the seeing and with the feeling. We pay very, very little attention to the listening, to the hearing. Now, in the same dimension, within the same dimension that we hear these birds this morning and the other morning sounds, is an arena of thought. And we're surely just as of hearing thoughts. When I say hearing thoughts, you understand we are really being thoughts, because thinking am I, or thought is this action that awareness is. And so as we're very still and are just awareness alone, being just the perceiver, the beholder, the listener, the feeler, we hear thoughts that we didn't know existed. But now, whose thoughts are they? Do they belong to us? Are they personal thoughts? Do they belong to the old man who says, this is my life? This is my universe? No, no, no. I tell you, these thoughts, just like these sights and these sounds this morning, are awareness being aware. They belong to the awareness that is perceiving. And whose is awareness? To whom does awareness belong? Well, awareness is the action of mind, isn't it? What is the purpose of mind if it isn't to be aware? Of what? Why, of itself, because mind is single, alone, total and all. Now listen, the proof of this aloneness, the proof of the aloneness of awareness, is the fact that we've never been outside awareness, have we? Have we ever heard a sound that didn't come to us as this very awareness that's aware right here, right now? Let's listen just a minute, and you tell me where we hear these sounds. These are just spring sounds being spring sounds, and they're included within awareness. Now look over there at the morning sun, and at the dogwood blooming, and at those martins standing atop the martin house, and soaring, some of them. And what was that just went overhead? Very close. And look over here at the blooming shrubbery. Yellow bells. That's a cherry tree over there. Mom calls that her dancing lady. She wears the finest finery. Yesterday, people noticed that through the spring foliage, which is very thin at the moment, we could see dogwoods everywhere. And do you know, watching the dogwoods through the trees, it became very apparent. Well, let me put it like this. There was a time when I enjoyed the beauty of an individual flower. Oh, I still do. But I look at an individual flower and I'd say, why, now there is a zinnia blooming. There is a rose blooming. And then later I graduated, so to speak, to the larger things, and I began to notice well, there is a shrub blooming. There is a dogwood blooming. Well, now look this morning about. You can see dogwoods over there, and a cherry tree in bloom. The yellow bells. Down here is thrift. Apparently it opens later in the morning. This is too early for it, I think. Well, now, you see, all of these blooming things are really the mountainside blooming. Isn't it funny that we always say the tree is blooming, but really, isn't it the earth in bloom?